You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, brought to you by 90 Min. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and on this edition of our transfer talk show, we're going to be keeping you or bringing you up to date with all the latest Arsenal transfer news. There is plenty to report. A lot of it is to do with outgoings. In fact, most of it is to do with outgoings rather than incomings, but it's something that we all knew and understood needed to happen this summer. So no real surprise on my part anyway. Wanted to start off though quickly by talking about kind of the backlash to the game against Chelsea, the fact that everything around the club right now just feels so downbeat, and it really, really does, doesn't it? To be quite honest and to put it in a blunt way, it's quite shit being an Arsenal supporter at the moment, isn't it? Everybody's kind of feeling horrible. Everybody's feeling disappointed, worried, concerned by what we've seen at the start of this season. I don't know about you guys, but it is driving me mad. I've got to be honest. I mean, last night I was lying there trying to sleep and I couldn't. And I kept getting drawn back to my phone and scrolling through Twitter. And when you scroll through Twitter, the majority of the stuff you'll see with relation to Arsenal is negative. And it just kind of really seeps into your mind, doesn't it? And in years gone by where it wasn't something that I did every single day, where I did have other distractions like work that wasn't to do with football, it was easier to kind of turn off from it. And I'm finding it, I've got to say, really, really difficult to switch off from what is going on at Arsenal right now when I'm not doing a podcast, when I'm not on another show, when I'm not writing about it. I'm finding it really difficult to kind of draw that line between Arsenal and the rest of life, because it is that negative. It is everywhere you turn at the moment. And I really kind of want to urge people to not allow yourself to get sucked into that, because once you do, it's really, really hard to get out of it. And to the point where I'm literally finishing up work and I'm now putting my phone to the side for a few hours so that I don't get tempted to go through Twitter, so that I don't get tempted to watch videos, to listen to podcasts that make my kind of feelings stronger, that it make me feel even more downbeat about what's going on at the moment. I think there has been some overreaction to the defeat against Chelsea, but that's expected. You know, people say, well, it's only 2 games in. Others will say, well, it's not 2 games, is it? Actually, Mikel Arteta has been here for a year and a half or so. And I get both points of view. And that's why it's becoming really difficult to kind of make sense of it all. It's become difficult for your mind not to kind of be scrambled by all of this at the moment. Is Mikel Arteta the biggest problem? Are there other issues that are hindering Mikel Arteta? If we do move him on, who do we bring in? You know, I've seen people talking about Antonio Conte. I've heard people talking about a number of top coaches out there who you would love to have, obviously, and you'd prefer to have over Mikel Arteta, obviously. I've said it before. I think Antonio Conte is the best coach in the world. But is that realistic? If we did move Mikel Arteta on tomorrow, would you trust in the people currently running the club to go out and get the right person in? It's hard, isn't it? It's hard. It's really hard. And yeah, I don't know why I started with that. I was planning to kind of talk a little bit about the backlash after the Chelsea game, but that's how I feel at the moment. You know, and this podcast is the Chronicles of a Gooner. So I thought I'd share with you guys some of my feelings, some of my experiences over the last 24 hours or so, because it has been tough. Switching off is a problem. And I'm sure it's the same for lots of you guys as well that follow the club very closely. Switching off is a must. And when there is so much negativity around Arsenal as there is now, It's very difficult to do that. It's very difficult not to let it bother you. It's very difficult not to let it affect you. But we move forward, and we take on West Bromwich Albion tomorrow night, Wednesday night at the Hawthorns in the Carabao Cup. Now, a few of you have messaged me over the last 24 hours asking if we're going to be doing a watch along to that. And we are. We're going to be doing a watch along right here in the studio. I'm going to be joined by Mike Stavrou, who many of you have seen on the podcast on numerous occasions. He's going to be here in the flesh. He's going to be sitting right here on a sofa next to me here in the studio, and we're going to be bringing you a live watch along. It's going to be like they normally are, loose commentary of what's going on for those of you that can't watch the game, and also some discussion and debate around what is unfolding and some of the wider topics on Arsenal as well. So I'm going to be sharing the link to that one a little bit later on today. So make sure that you do give it a like, make sure you turn your notification on, and we'd love to have you alongside us for the game. But without further ado, let's get into some of the transfer talk. We're going to talk transfers, and we're going to bring you up to date on the fitness of some of Arsenal's players. The club releasing a fitness update earlier on today. But as I say, let's begin with the transfers, and let's begin with the potential departures. And there is a lot of noise regarding the future of Willian. Now, the Brazilian is being linked with a move back to his home country, back to Corinthians. However, as Charles Watts has reported earlier on today, that deal is not done yet. So don't start having a party about Willian leaving, as I know a lot of you might. That deal is not yet done. And if it is going to get done, there's a good chance that Arsenal are going to have to subsidise some of Willian's wages. Obviously, that's disappointing. Obviously, that's frustrating. Obviously, it's another poor decision that we've made, and that we're going to be paying for the next 2-3 years now, regardless of whether he's playing for us or not. So obviously that's a disappointment. But I think it's important that Arsenal do take this ruthless approach. I think it's important that Arsenal do move these players on, because maybe the Arsenal of years gone by would have held on to Willian and wouldn't have been so forceful in trying to move him out of the club just a year into his Arsenal stay. So I take some confidence from that, in a weird way, that they are making an effort and that they are working behind the scenes to get him out the door. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. The latest, though, from Brazil is that while Corinthians are in talks over Willian and would like to see him join the club, it would be a free transfer, with, as I say, a good chance that Arsenal end up subsidising some of those wages. We're being told that Willian himself would still prefer to find another club in Europe. Willian is not yet ready to return back to Brazil. He loves life in Europe, and he'd be happy to remain on the continent. So that, that is an interesting point. I think it's clear that Willian is not massive on the idea of going back to Corinthians himself. They might be keen. Arsenal might be keen to get that deal done, but you feel as though if Willian doesn't want it, if Willian prefers something else, then this is still quite a way away from actually happening. Now, I talk about him wanting to stay on the continent, preferring to stay with a European club. I guess to Arsenal, the benefit to that is that we're more likely to move all of his wages on to another club, or we're more likely to have to subsidize less of it if he joins a European club, because they have a greater spending power than those in the Brazilian top flight, which is, it could benefit Arsenal. But again, you need to find that club. You need to find that club that is keen enough to bring him in, that wants to make that deal happen. And then from there, you can start to work out whether it's something that's financially viable on both sides. In other news, Nketiah Kolasinac continues to be linked with a move to Fenerbahce, despite representatives from Fenerbahce coming out and saying that while the player is somebody on their list, we've heard that term a lot this summer, the list, he is not currently in talks with them. So that one is nowhere near as far progressed as we might have thought a couple of days ago. And it makes sense, because Nketiah Kolasinac was on the bench, wasn't he, against Chelsea. So that one is not, has not moved a great deal in the last few days. So Fenerbahce have admitted that they're interested and that they like the player and that he's on their list, as I say, but there's been no talks with Arsenal over a deal that would take him across to Turkey. Remember, Nketiah Kolasinac has got until the end of the season before his contract runs out, and he's on a big contract. He's on a big salary. We understand he's on more than 100k a week, which obviously makes it difficult to move him on. Obviously makes him reluctant to move on from fear of losing a fair amount of his wages. So, yeah, really interesting one there. But as I say, it's not really moved on from the last few days. So the interest is there. Fenerbahce are keen, but they haven't actually opened the door for talks with Arsenal, which suggests that they may not be as keen as they're saying. Lucas Torreira is another player being heavily linked with a move away from Arsenal, and it looks as though he is going to return to Serie A. Looks as though he's going to join Vincenzo Italiano's Fiorentina on loan. Not clear if there is an option to buy at the end of that or an obligation to buy. Some people have reported it as an option. Others have reported it as an obligation. You'd hope for Arsenal's sake that it is an obligation. You'd hope that there'll be sort of, if not getting the money in right now, at least making arrangements that will see them recuperate some of that transfer fee that was spent on Lucas Torreira 2-3 years ago now. So Lucas Torreira very close to moving back to Serie A. I think that suits him. I think he'll be, I think he'll be welcome with open arms in Italy. Still has a really good reputation there, despite coming to Arsenal and it not really working out. Fiorentina are a team that many people expect to have a better season. As I mentioned, Vincenzo Italiano, the coach, is a very good manager. Did really, really well with Spezia previously and is expected to restore some pride in Florence and hopefully push them up the table. And I think with Lucas Torreira, he stands a good chance of doing that. It would be a really good signing from Fiorentina's point of view, but I think it's also a really good move for Lucas Torreira back to Italy with a relatively big club and the opportunity to kind of rebuild his career again after a difficult period. Also, Eddie Nketiah continues to be linked with a move away from Arsenal. Crystal Palace are said to be interested in the young striker, Patrick Vieira, having a look at some of the Arsenal boys as he looks to continue improving his squad. It's understood that Crystal Palace feel as though £10 million is a fair price for Eddie Nketiah. However, Arsenal are looking for £20 million. £20 million feels excessive to me. It does. You know, Joe Willock went for 25, but Joe Willock went out on loan in the Premier League and delivered and proved himself in the second half of last season. Eddie Nketiah hasn't done that yet. You know, Eddie Nketiah hasn't gone out on loan at the highest level, Premier League level, and proven himself to be a competent striker. Therefore, it's natural that Crystal Palace are going to want to pay less. Obviously, they're going to try and drive a hard bargain. Obviously, they're going to try and get the best price that they possibly can. And I wouldn't be surprised if we somewhere meet in the middle, or we meet somewhere in the middle towards the real closing stages of the window. So that's where I am on that. Remember, still 7 days left, and I still expect a fair amount of movement with regards to outgoings to happen. But as Graham says in the chat, and Graham says, take the 10 million and run. I would as well. I would take the 10 million pounds. I would take the 10 million pounds. There we go. Can you guys hear me? Don't know what happened there. I think we're back. Yep, we're back. I would take the 10 million pounds and run. Absolutely. I think that's the best way to go about it. I think that 10 million pounds is a relatively respectable fee. I think, as Craig says, if we could get somewhere like 15 million, you'd take that. Obviously, you'd prefer that, obviously, but I think you got to push for the 15. You got to push for the meeting in the middle, but not push too hard that you scupper the whole deal. And that's the kind of art of negotiating, isn't it? Which Arsenal clearly haven't mastered over the last few years. So yeah, I'd take 10 million for Eddie. I would. Also being reported that an unnamed German club are interested in Nketiah as well. I think Nketiah would probably prefer to stay in the UK, which obviously will play a part on what actually unfolds with that. But yeah, number of clubs interested in Eddie Nketiah. The other bit I wanted to just talk about with regards, it's not with regards to transfers, but new contracts, is that of Granit Xhaka. Now, Granit Xhaka has gone on social media and announced his new contract with Arsenal, but Arsenal haven't made a big hoo-ha about it. Arsenal have announced it in the middle of an article. Kroenke kind of let the cat out of the bag last week when he made a statement. And it just feels to me like And you know, we were talking about this yesterday on the Gooner talk with Owen. He brought this point up. He said, how cowardice is it of Arsenal to sign this guy up to the contract, tell him that you want him to be part of the plans moving forward, and then fail to announce it in the way you'd announce anybody else's contract extension. You know, and I know the reasons for it. You know, you look at the social media outcry when that news was announced. You look at how people have reacted to the news that Granit Xhaka is staying put and he's not joining Roma and has signed a new deal, and you can understand why the club want to kind of avoid that backlash. But what does that say to the player? It's like, well, you know, we've signed you up, mate, and we do think you're the right man, and we do think you're an important part of this team. But we know that the fans don't like you. So what we're going to do is we're just going to let this go under the radar. If I were a player, I'd be livid. I'd be absolutely livid. I really would. I know some people don't want him at the club. And I'm not going to get into that debate again about whether we should keep Granit Xhaka or whether we should have moved him on. But having made the decision to keep him, having made the decision to sign him up on a new deal, I personally think it's embarrassing that the club haven't made an announcement the same way they'd make an announcement for anybody else in the squad. I don't get it. I really don't. Are we going to get that announcement in the future, in the near future? I don't know. It just, for me, that is cowardice on Arsenal's part. It's embarrassing. And I don't like it. I think that either you go all in on the player and you say, yes, you are with us and we back our decision to keep you and we believe it was the right decision. And here you go, Granit. There's your contract. There's the announcement. To do it the way they've done it is very, very poor, in my opinion. And as I said, if I were the player, I wouldn't be best pleased with that. Granit Xhaka himself, as I said, has posted. He says home is where the heart is. And he's posted a picture of himself and his agent signing his contract. And says he's delighted to continue on at Arsenal. But yeah, as I say, it's a weird one, isn't it? It's a weird one. I get that people don't want to hear it. I get that people aren't on board with it, but I didn't think that that kind of shoving it under the carpet was the right thing to do. And sometimes I think as a manager, one of the ways that you get the most out of your players is even when the fan opinion is the opposite, you back your player and your player should respond to that. Right. We've seen it many years over many times over the years where players have not been performing. The fans have wondered why that player is performing and the manager's gone out on a limb to really, to really make a point and prove that he stands by his player. And then off the back of that, the player responds, improves, and everybody kind of wins. And the fans go, well, yeah, maybe we got that wrong. But to do it this way kind of suggests that Mikel Arteta and Arsenal Football Club are not that happy about signing Granit Xhaka up on a new deal. In which case, why the hell did you do it? So it's, to me, that's really poor form from the club. I'm really disappointed because we were a club of class, of tradition, and I don't think that upholds those values. That particular bit of conduct around Granit Xhaka's contract announcement doesn't uphold the values that I've always said Arsenal stand for. So yeah. Frustrating. Jerome Mark says, does he really care if we make a big deal with regards to an announcement? He's getting his money. Maybe he doesn't care, Jerome, but I just think it sends the wrong message. I think it's basically the club saying we're shit scared of the backlash of this on social media. It's not like they, as Matt says, it makes no sense. It's not like this club isn't used to negative social media. Exactly. Every single thing that they post is full of negative comments. Everybody and anybody who's talking about Arsenal right now is talking about them in a bad light. So that should not deter you from doing it, in my opinion. You've done it. People know you've done it. People are pissed off about it regardless. And so to not make the announcement the way they would, as I've said, for any other player, if I were that player, I would be upset about that. I'd be frustrated about that. I think that was really cowardly of the football club. That's just my view on it. Just a quick reminder before we continue to let you guys know that this podcast is brought to you by manscaped.com. So for all your male grooming needs, head over to the website now, enter the discount code 90min20 and you can get 20% off of your order as well as free worldwide shipping. As I've said before, you stand to save yourself a fair bit of money and I'm sure your partners will thank you. Manscaped, as I say, for all your male grooming needs, and we thank them for their very, very kind sponsorship. Also, just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, please do hit that like button. It is really, really important. We'll just quickly check in on where we're at in terms of likes as it stands. There's over 200 of you watching the show live right now. I'm sure there'll be plenty more watching it back later and listening to us via the audio platform. So please do hit that like button, though, if you are watching on YouTube. We've only got 36 likes, but we've got 203 of you watching. I've noticed over the last few days that people have been disliking videos because of the things we've been talking about. Because when I've said to them, or when they've DM'd me and I've said, you know, what didn't you like about the video? I'm interested because I want to improve them. And people are saying to me, no, you know, I've disliked the video because you're talking about Arsenal getting beat. Well, why are you penalising me because Arsenal got beat? But yeah, please do hit that like button if you haven't done so already, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're around about 300 away from our next target, which is 16k here on the video platform. If you're listening via the audio, though, please do leave us a review. Right, let's move on to some team news provided by Arsenal a little bit earlier on today. So some positive news. Gabriel has returned to training. My God, did we miss him at the weekend. Lacazette is back at London Colney. He's back training. Kieran Tierney and Gabriel Martinelli are both okay. They suffered cramping during the game against Chelsea, so no real concerns there. They'll be back. And of course, Martin Odegaard has been given clearance to play. So that's brilliant news. Aside from the team news, the other kind of rumours going around are that Mikel Arteta has until the second international break to prove himself, that talks have already begun with Antonio Conte. I'm not sure I believe that, but anyway. And we've also heard about links to Kieran Trippier, which we'll probably pick up on a little bit more if that does progress, because I don't really feel it's that worthwhile talking about at this moment in time, I've got to say. But just going back to that Arteta point and about him having till the next international break, not the one that's just around the corner, the one after, and talking about the rumors linking us with Antonio Conte. Let me just say this: for all the kind of talk I've said and given you guys about how, yes, Mikel Arteta isn't getting everything right, but actually there are deeper problems than him. We're still suffering from a hangover from issues that were created or sparked long before he arrived at the club. I will say this: if Arsenal can persuade Antonio Conte to join Arsenal Football Club, then I would sack Mikel Arteta today. Genuinely. But you've got to do that. You've got to convince a top level manager that we need to bring him in. You know, you've got to bring him in. You've got to bring in a manager that improves us instantly. Because as I've said before, and as Sam agrees in the chat, Conte is the best manager in the world. For me, he is right now. So if you can persuade him, then it's sorry, Mikel. I would accept that some of it was out of your hands, some of it was out of your control. You have been unlucky in certain instances, but if we are definitely getting an upgrade, then I'll do it. But if you're telling me that we're going to go get some of the managers that have been linked with us, man. I saw someone in the chat box yesterday say Sean Dyche. Sean Dyche. If you're telling me that we're going to get Sean Dyche, then I won't bother. I wouldn't sack Mikel Arteta just yet. But if we could attract that top level manager, then of course you'd do it. Of course you would. It'd be for the good of the football club. And this is where I get a little bit frustrated, because I've on Twitter over the last few days, probably more so than ever. And a couple of you have asked in the chat why I seem a little bit downbeat on the pod today. And I do feel a little bit downbeat. And I said it right at the top of the show. I feel a little bit downbeat. I feel a little bit fed up with the whole thing. I feel a little bit fed up with where Arsenal are at the moment and the reaction to where Arsenal are at the moment. I logged onto social media yesterday, and normally, listen, when you do what I'm doing now as a job, you will get criticism. You will get called every name under the sun. you will get DM requests from complete and utter randomers with faceless accounts who call you this and they call you that. And I've learned not to let it bother me. I've learned not to let it get to me. I've learned over the last year or so to be able how to switch that off from my mind. But what I've got really frustrated with over the last few days, and I can't help but get frustrated with, is people going, oh, you don't want to slag off Arsenal because you want to get your tea and biscuits at Emirates Stadium. Did you not see the picture that I posted on social media at the game against Chelsea? I sit in the North Bank in block 6 like everybody else, like a normal fan. I care about the same things that every Arsenal fan out there does. I want to see Arsenal progress. I want to see Arsenal get back to where they want to be. Just because we don't always share the same opinion on how we get there, it doesn't mean that we have different wants and different needs as Arsenal fans. And, there's been a few tweets over the last few days that have got on my nerves, and I've blocked them and I've muted them and all of that jazz. But this is what I mean when I say it's so shit to be an Arsenal fan right now. Because whenever Arsenal fail, it's bad enough that you've got the feeling of the failure and that you're feeling down about that on your shoulders. You've got other people that for a fact are lurking in the background, waiting for Arsenal to fail so that they can make their point, so that they can have a go at people, so that they can say, well, look at this. I've been called over the last few days. What have I been called? I've been called PR Symeou, PR Harry. What do you mean? Do you think I get paid or something to say what I say? Do you think I don't have my opinions, that they're all made up, that they're all based on hoping one day that in the one-off chance, in the tiny little, not even a 1% chance that Arsenal are going to say to me, hey, Harry, come here and work for us? Then I'm not going to work for Arsenal. How am I going to work for Arsenal? What am I going to do? Take over from Mikel Arteta? No. That and that's where I think being an Arsenal fan has become horrible nowadays, because there is that need to be outraged all the time. It's not because people are genuinely outraged. Some are, some are genuinely outraged, but others do it because they think it gets them clout. Others do it because they think it's what people want to hear. That guy that did that video in his car, I don't know who he is. I don't know his name. What the hell was that? What the hell was that? What was that video? And we wonder why other fan bases take the piss out of us, because people gave that guy exactly what he wanted by sharing that video, by liking that video, by retweeting that video. It is mad. It is mad to think that a young guy, and he's definitely younger than me for sure. I don't know how old he is. I don't know him, as I say, but to think that the teenagers, and to say all teenagers is wrong. That's a generalization that I shouldn't make. But to think that people nowadays think that there is something to gain from being an idiot on a camera, it's mad. It is mad. Like, people actually do that because they think it's going to get them somewhere in life. And the reason they think that is because other people who have done it in the past have got somewhere off the back of it. And it's mad. It's mad to think that we have created almost social media superstars by giving airtime to their bullshit, that we now have a generation coming up of young people who think that that is the way they should act, who think that is the way they go about achieving their goals. It just baffles me. Maybe I sound old when I say stuff like this, and maybe I'll, some people will get upset. I just want to say it's not personal to anyone. It's a general kind of observation that I've made over the last few years, and it's one that really, really frustrates me. But there we go. There we go. That's enough about that. Let's get some of your questions in the live chat. I can see there are lots of you agreeing, talking about the way that fans are behaving at the moment, telling me not to let it get to me. Yeah, look, I'm not saying I've been up all night thinking about it or worrying about it or being concerned about it. but I am finding it increasingly difficult to block it out. And I never used to have a problem with that, and now I do. And that's not a place I want to be in. That's not a place I want to be in. It's not a place that any Arsenal fan should be in, really. And we've allowed that environment to kind of create itself, because as a society, we've given, I think, the wrong people, platforms to. No, not the wrong people. That's harsh. We've given a place in society for fake outrage. We've created like a space for it. Like there is a demand for it now that was never there 10 years ago. That's what I struggle with. That's what I struggle with. Right, let's get some of your questions in the live chat box. Thank you for all your kind messages in the chat box as well. Plenty coming through. Matt G says, have you seen the cat again? Do you know what, Matt? I haven't. But I've got to be honest, when I'm on a podcast now, I'm always glancing to the left to see if I can see the cat through the door. It's weird. It's like become part of the routine. When I'm not looking at the camera, it's not because I'm always looking at the cat. It's because I've got a separate camera to the laptop now. So when I'm looking at your comments, I'm not looking at the camera, and it looks like I'm searching for the cat all the time, but I'm not. I promise. Right, let's go back to the comments. Let's take some of your questions. Don't forget, hit that like button again if you haven't done so already. It really, really does help. We have got over 300 of you watching us live right now across the multiple platforms, and we'd really benefit from those likes and those subscribes. Also, if you want to go one further and become a member of the channel, you can do so. Let's see what we got here. Alan says that we're all entitled to analyze and interpret the performance of our team. Alan, I completely agree. We are all entitled to have an opinion. And if your opinion is Mikel Arteta out, that is a fair opinion to have, and one that it's becoming increasingly difficult to argue against. What I'm saying is you can have your opinion. You can sit down like we are now, in a calm manner and have a discussion about why Mikel Arteta is not the right man, for example, if that is your point of view, and what needs to change and what needs to happen. Screaming in front of a camera in your car, literally faking it the whole way through, that is moronic, in my opinion. And it's disappointing that we've given that kind of thing a place in society. That's what winds me up. Right, let's take some of these questions. Eli M, interesting question here. He says, hi Harry, love your content. Got a question. Which Arsenal player would you best fancy to score a one-on-one or a penalty at the moment? Weirdly enough, I'd still pick Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, even though he's not been at the top of his game. You look at everybody else, and it's very hit and miss in front of goal. I feel like Aubameyang's problem last season was not necessarily in his finishing. I think he did miss some good chances, but I think what frustrated people most about Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's performances last season was that he wasn't constantly involved. And I think if he is more involved, then you can forgive the kind of lower goals tally. But because he was on the peripheries of things all the time, and because he wasn't scoring as many goals, people kind of looked at him and pointed at that. I still think he's the best finisher. I still think he's the coldest finisher in the Arsenal side, so I'd have to pick him. But really good question. Thank you very much, mate. Let's see what else we've got here. Carrie Tanninen says, why are Arsenal in a position to get Conte? Also, would it be the long-term solution if he's mad enough to come? I was of the opinion that when Arsene Wenger left, Arsenal needed a stabilizer of a coach. They needed someone who was going to come in and maybe not necessarily get us straight back in the Champions League, but who was going to come and prevent the rot, almost build a kind of scaffolding to keep the team standing while we rebuilt it, while we dealt with the issues that we had. And we went for Unai Emery, and I don't think that was the right appointment, as we've all discussed on numerous occasions, and we are where we are now. But having done that and having made the wrong appointment, then Arsenal had to make a decision. And that decision was, do we go for the longer term approach in which case you don't appoint someone like Antonio Conte, because Antonio Conte is the kind of guy that if you bring him the wrong coffee, he'll probably tell you to piss off and walk out the club. So Arsenal had to make that decision. Do you go long-term or do you go short-term fix? The problem with short-term fixes is this. Short-term fixes are fine if you accept, acknowledge, and understand that every couple of years, you're going to need to back a new manager to go out and build the team that he wants to build. Either that, or you have a director of football in place who buys the players with a longer term strategy in place, and you just bring coaches in, coach after coach after coach, to try and get the maximum out of that group. And you make it very clear at that point that that is what the coach is coming in to do. The director of football will be buying the players, will be in charge of recruitment, will be in charge of contracts, and you as the coach will be tasked with getting the maximum out of them. But Arsenal can't afford to do that. Arsenal don't have a director of football in place, in my opinion, who is at that level where you can almost give him the keys to the club and say, here you go, all the recruitment is on you. That's why Mikel Arteta has been promoted as a manager, because he has to have an input on that, because he's the manager. And Edu, in my opinion, is not yet good enough to take full charge of the club. He's not got a track record that says that he's done that elsewhere. And so now what you have is you have a manager who is involved in all the various aspects of the club now, recruitment, player signings, contracts, etc. And you're almost asking him to do it all, but you're also asking him to maintain a certain level of performance, which he hasn't been able to do up until this point. So the decision, it all depends on what the decision is that you make as a football club in terms of the direction you take. And the big problem at Arsenal, bigger than Mikel Arteta, bigger than any player that we have at the football club, is that that direction has been missing for years. It's not been clear in what direction Arsenal want to go. We brought Sven Mislintat in. Let's bring in a scout that identifies players and is fantastic at that. And he will take charge of who we bring in and make sure that our recruitment is up to scratch for the coach to then have the best squad available to then try and achieve what it is that he needs to achieve. And look how long that lasted. You know, and then it was Raul. Let's bring in a big football executive who's been there, done it, been at Barcelona, got the T-shirt. And that failed miserably as well. So the direction has never been clear. And Arsenal have never found the direction and been traveling in that direction for long enough for us to reap the rewards of it. And now we're at a place where I do think we're underperforming. I do think we're not at the level that we need to be. And I don't think that can ever be acceptable at a club of this size. But I also acknowledge that the reason we've made the signings that we've made is because we are looking at the longer term, because we are trying to build for the future. Now, you don't know how that's going to pan out in 3-4 years' time to be able to determine right now, today, whether that was the right decision or not. But you can at least see a direction. And that's what I'm kind of holding on to at the moment. Are we playing well enough? No, we're not. You know, people will argue that the signings we made haven't improved the team immediately. And to a degree, I agree with that. But at least there is a direction. At least we're going somewhere or trying to go somewhere. And I think we're going to have to take some rough before we get there, unfortunately. Vikshan says that Harry select between Graham Potter, Conte, and Brendan Rodgers. I obviously pick Antonio Conte because, as I said, I think he's top class. Then Brendan Rodgers, and then Graham Potter. Let's see what else we've got here in terms of your content, questions, comments. Arsenal Legend says, Harry, do you feel that Arteta has 5 games to save his job? I don't think that's the case. I know that was reported yesterday by Matt Law of The Telegraph. And a lot of people have made quite a bit of that story. The next international break, is that enough time for Mikel Arteta to turn around Arsenal's fortunes? And if he doesn't do that, then he'll be fighting for his job. I don't think that they're going to sack him. I really don't. And I'm not saying that's the right call necessarily. I think we've got to see how things unfold. And I think we kind of got to take things from week to week at the moment. I think it's dangerous to set limits. It's dangerous to set deadlines. I think you got to keep monitoring the situation, and there will come a point, if things don't turn around, where you get that feeling and you get that vibe and you hit that brick wall and you recognize this is just not going to happen, and you got to move him on. But I don't think there is that feeling within the club that it is 5 games or bust. I really don't. Let's see what else we've got here. 1 second. I don't know why my mic keeps doing that. Go. We're back. Inter says, will he be out if we lose to West Bromwich Albion tomorrow? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it will heap a whole load more pressure on him if we get beaten, but I don't think it will spell the end for Mikel Arteta. I think it's one of those games, and we're going to do a preview on it tomorrow on our early show. We're going to talk a little bit about how I would line up for that game, and I do think at this point you got to go with the strongest side because we just need a win. You know, in an ideal world, I'd have liked to have seen some of those fringe players if everybody was fit. It'd have been good to see some of those players maybe pushing for the first team. It might have been a good opportunity to put some players in the shop window. Because if I'm being completely honest, I don't care about the Carabao Cup. Call me a snob. I don't care. I really don't care. For me, it's about achieving what we need to achieve in the league. If we go on a cup run in the process, great, happy days. But I'm not going to lose my shit if we go out of the cup. But now we're in a place where the cup game has added significance and added importance because we need to get that win. We need to get that monkey off of our back, and we need to, kickstart our season that hasn't started yet. Let's be honest. And it's probably not going to start on Saturday at the Etihad either. So it's really imperative for me that we do play a strong team to ensure, or at least increase our chances of getting the best result possible. Shoot the Defense. Big hello to Stel and all the guys over there. Make sure you check out the Shoot the Defense podcast. It's fantastic, and they've added loads of brand new podcasts to their little network as well over the last few months, which is excellent. Keep up the great work, Stel. And he says, you can't give Arteta over 100 million to spend and then sack him after 2 months of the new season. And I agree. You know, that's you can say that he doesn't deserve to be there anymore as fans, but this is why I don't think the club would pull the trigger on him. I don't think they'd give him that kind of investment at a time like this, at a time where the pandemic is still a problem or has been a problem over the last year or so. I don't think they give him that kind of money. I don't think they back him the way they've backed him. And when I say back him, some people will argue they haven't backed him enough, but what they've done is they've made funds available to him prior to moving players out. And very few of us expected that to happen. Very few of us thought that Arsenal would be able to spend 120 odd million pounds if we didn't get people out, or without getting people out beforehand. And I mean, who have we moved out for significant money? Joe Willock, Matteo Guendouzi's on a loan, Mavropanos is out on a loan. Yeah, there are obligations to buy and clauses to buy those players at the end of those loan spells, but that money isn't coming until next year. So for Arsenal to have put their hands in their pockets and said, here you go, Mikel, here's the money you need to strengthen the team, or that you want to strengthen the team. Here you go. Let's do it. And we'll just bank on moving those players out later on. Is a real shift in strategy for Arsenal, because that's not what we'd have expected from KSC in the past. But they've recognized that we have to do that now because our position is that bad. Our position is that poor, and we've got to do it. So that's where we're at the moment. So given that, I don't think that they sack him. Now, we might get to a point as fans that we think it's time for him to go way before the club do, but it's the club's decision ultimately. Mike Axford says, hi, Harry, are we likely to purchase any more players before the deadline? I don't think we'll be purchasing any more until we move players out. And I think that from what we've heard, Arsenal are still in the market. Arsenal are still, keeping an eye on stuff and still looking around for opportunities. And if the right opportunity presents itself, I think they will do business, yes. But obviously there's no guarantees. And as I say, I think a lot of it now, having signed the players that we've already signed, will be down to Arsenal or reliant upon Arsenal moving some players out as well. I'm going to take one more question, and then I'm going to ask you guys to start bombarding the chat with where it is you're listening from. As you can see, I'm a little bit frustrated today, a little bit downbeat, and nothing pleases me more than seeing where all the wonderful places in the world that you guys are tuning in from. So yeah, get involved. Drop in the comments. Where is it that you're tuned in from at the moment? Aaron says, Harry, if the team is fully fit, do you think under a new manager they will achieve top 6? I would have said that the team fully fit under Mikel Arteta has a chance of finishing top 6. I really would. And that's why I've been really frustrated by what's happened, over the last couple of weeks. You go into the first game of the season, you got some players that are not fully fit because of the Euros. You've got others who have been struck down by COVID. You have to bring 2 kids in up top, and then you go into the game against Chelsea and you lose Ben White, and Aubameyang's still not fit enough, and Lacazette's not available, and you've signed Odegaard and he hasn't got his visa yet, and Partey's out again. It's just, that's why I feel like there's just everything is kind of conspiring against Mikel Arteta. On top of him making mistakes, let's be clear about that. This is not me excusing him for some of his mistakes, but there are other factors. There are other reasons as to why it's been a difficult start to the season, other than Mikel Arteta not picking the team that you want him to pick or not setting Arsenal up in the right way. It's a combination of things. But yeah, thank you for your question, mate. Really appreciate it. Right, let's give you guys some shout outs before we wrap up. Big shout out to the Guns and Yellow Ribbons podcast. Big shout out to Fergus. Good to see you at the game on Sunday, mate. He says he's in the centre of the universe, Luton, Essex. Brilliant stuff. Carrie joins us from Espoo in Finland, and he's on a bus. He's on an effing bus. Why is it an effing bus? Carrie, let us know. Big hello to Lotto in Albania. We've got, we got loads of places. Hold on. Dave is in Syracuse, New York. Terence is in Highbury. Inter's in Brixton. Alistair's in West Sussex. Matt is in South London. He says, appreciate all the top content, mate. Appreciate your support, mate. Really do. You're one of the regulars in here. And thank you so much. Really appreciate it. T Rich is in the moon, apparently, or on the moon. Side's in Kuwait. Matt's in New York. V is in North Korea. Alan's in Sydney. Martin is in Ladbroke Grove. Gun de Canyon is in Bristol. Wandering Minstrel was in the Costa del North, London. Riddy's in Canterbury. The Modern Gooners in Guangzhou. We've got East Sussex from Craig. We've got Josh in North London. We've got Alan in Cork Island. George is in Brighton. So yeah, loads. We've got Germany. We've got Galway, Ireland. Fantastic stuff. We've got Nigeria. We've got Boston, Borneo. Wow. Incredible to see that you guys are joining us from all over the place. And we've got Simon, of course, joining us from Stockholm in Sweden. Right, we're going to leave it there. We'll be back later on with another live podcast. So make sure you've got your notifications turned on. Make sure you hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new. And if you want to go one further and become a member, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description. I'll be back very, very soon with more Arsenal content. Until then, take care.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.